Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. Yesterday, the price of XRP dropped to as low as $2.82 before the entire market rallied, with XRP price getting pretty close to $3, and we've seen a bit of a pullback since then. XRP sitting around $2.90 now, but mostly sideways price action since then over the last 24 hours. But I'm going to share with you perspective from a ton of different XRP chart analysts in this latest Moon Lambo Hot Jam, and you'll see that multiple chart analysts actually think that right now, XRP's looking like it's at the point where it's ready to rebound. So that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen literally today, but it does look primed for that, many chart analysts believe. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say are right. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. As I record this video, it is 6:02 a.m. Central Time, Thursday, August 21st, 2025. XRP, like I said, $2.92. Bitcoin at $113,418. But it did drop as low as $112,558 just yesterday morning, sparking fears across the entire crypto space. My God, social media. It just does not make sense to be fearful here. I'm just going to continue insisting that every single price... How many price drops have there been since the inception of crypto? Every single one of them gets people in this hysteria and they're emotionally throwing fits. It's not necessary, folks. We're going to keep trending up. Gotta like calm down just a little bit, you know. Crypto Michael gets that. Here's what he wrote. He said, everyone is calling for a major crash at support again. They never learn. And so look, I will always acknowledge we don't know for sure what's going to happen, in particular in the short term. But when the market gets this, like in a tizzy to this degree, and this many people are screaming, it's the end of the world, that's usually the moment where things reverse. You know, and I say that because the crowd's typically wrong, in particular at the extremes. So yeah, it's possible we could go lower, but still, based on historic precedent, what's probable is even if that were to happen, we're still going to move to the upside. This market cycle is not over. We are not done. It would be beyond bizarre if the top for everything were actually in. That's totally unprecedented. So humans are just going to behave differently now. They're not going to rotate profit from Bitcoin into other... They're done being greedy. Human greed no longer exists. It's no longer part of human DNA. Come on, folks. And then you look at global M2, global liquidity just recently hitting all-time highs, and you know that Bitcoin, and as a result, the entire crypto asset class lags behind by about 12 weeks. Why wouldn't it continue to fall? It almost always does. There's so many reasons. So he's right. And also there's this... This is the others BTC chart, so we're talking about altcoins here, outside of the top 10 coins by market cap, priced against Bitcoin. And chart analyst Mustache wrote, #altcoins. Did you know that altcoins have been forming a falling wedge for more than 4 years? Patience. We haven't seen anything yet. And so, it's like I frequently point out. Markets find bottoms, and sometimes it takes many, many years for those structures to play out. And I'm going to highlight more specifically in this video, just in a few minutes. Give me a little bit of time here. But specifically with Ethereum and specifically with XRP. It just is the case. There is such a thing as an accumulation range, and sometimes it's a lot longer than what you want, but them's the break, son. Okay? We have to be adults. We don't get to choose. Just control what you can control. Okay? You can't control when the market goes, though. Either you have exposure when it goes or you don't. Don't stress the parts that you can't control. You don't get to choose when it goes. So even if the worst happened and we're in a bear market now and we just don't know it yet and it's going to take another several years to go, make peace with that because you can't control it anyway. But I'm telling you, and that's the right mindset, I don't believe that's the case. I do not believe for a moment that that we're entering a bear market now. Everything's going to start breaking down. That doesn't make any logical sense. I would be shocked, and that would be an instance where this time is different. The famous last words are actually not famous last words, but I don't believe that for a moment. I think altcoins are absolutely going to rip, and they've been structure-wise, they've been getting queued up to do so. It's so obvious. Here's a post from chart analyst Credible Crypto. I shared this yesterday in a video. I want to repeat this though, and there's reason for this. Here he wrote, it would be very surprising to me if $105,000 was breached, talking about Bitcoin, of course, because from a time perspective, It would set things back a bit. And at this stage of the cycle, that would surprise me. As long as $105,000 isn't breached, the implications are that we will see very aggressive acceleration to the upside in the coming weeks/months, and that is more in line with my expectations with where we are at in the cycle. Okay, the reason that caught my attention is because the blockchain backer cited that level, that price level for Bitcoin just yesterday. And I think those two are a couple of the best chart analysts in the entire crypto space. And so the blockchain backer basically, I'm just going to paraphrase here, but he basically was asked, what would make you think that the top is in for Bitcoin? And what does that mean for XRP? And he basically said, if Bitcoin drops to around $105,000, that would signal to him that the top for Bitcoin this market cycle is likely in. So that caught my attention because immediately when he said that, I just thought back to this post from Credible Crypto. Because Credible Crypto, look, catch the vibe of this thing. I just read it to you. He's like, yeah, that'd be pretty weird. So you have two of the best analysts in the space on their own. They just happen to be talking about the same level. And they're both like, that would be a little sketch. Now, the good news is, neither of them thinks that is the most probable outcome. And so the blockchain backer, he was just saying, it's a question if it happened. And he would think, yeah, probably the top for Bitcoin is in. Now, even more interesting, though, and perhaps more concerning, is that he said, if that's the case, if that's the top for Bitcoin, that he said he'd seriously start to consider the idea that the top for XRP is also in this market cycle. So that would mean if that's the case, he would genuinely consider, if the top for Bitcoin's in, if it goes to $105,000, he would genuinely consider that the top of this market cycle for XRP is what we saw in July, just about a month ago, when XRP hit its all-time high of $3.65. Now, to be clear, the blockchain backer does not believe that's the case. That is not what he said, okay? He's basically just answering a question about what it would take for him to flip bearish there. And I cannot tell you how shocking that would be to me. If that's actually the high, and I do not believe it is. I do not. It just wouldn't make sense for tons of reasons. I'm going to get into some more of them as we go through the rest of this video. But the idea that XRP hit an all-time high, January 4th, 2018, of $3.35, and then spent almost a decade consolidating, defeating the SEC, all that stuff. Everything we went through. Only to finally, after missing last market cycle, only to finally hit a new all-time high, but only, what? What are we talking about here? 40 cents higher? Or 30 cents higher than the previous all-time high from almost a decade ago? I find that very hard to believe, especially with all of the strength and how well everything is so perfectly queued up. It's difficult to stomach that. It's difficult to fathom that could even possibly happen, frankly, here. Credible Crypto certainly doesn't think that's the most probable move. Here's an XRP BTC chart. He's got the little eyeball emoji here pointing at XRP in the short term, potentially about to break out against Bitcoin. And he's been warning about this. Not warning. Citing that this is something that he thinks has a high probability of occurring. And I mentioned that yesterday. He's very optimistic. So Credible Crypto has not changed his expectations on XRP. He still thinks it's going to peak between $20 to $30 this market cycle. And the blockchain backer, he's on the more conservative end, but he hasn't changed his expectation either. He still thinks that it's going to hit $8, $9, $10. And again, unless something wacky happens, there's no reason to think that we're not going to get to a way higher price before this thing's all done, Here's a post from chart analyst Ali Martinez, and he said XRP looks ready to rebound. So there's another analyst that is like, yeah, this thing looks like it's ready to go. So this is this is not an XRP BTC chart, which is what Credible Crypto had, but still wouldn't be surprised if both end up being true. Here's a post from chart analyst Steph's Crypto. He says XRP breakout incoming, and he's showing a symmetrical triangle dating back to when XRP hit its most recent all-time high about a month ago at $3.65, and you can see that the range, the volatility of I said that exactly backwards. The range in terms of volatility has been decreasing, obviously, and as you get closer and closer to the apex of a symmetrical triangle, you should always expect it's going to break, and typically before the apex. And given that we're in a bull market, I'm going to suspect that it'll just move right onto the upside here. And frankly, unless the entire crypto asset class breaks down, it's hard to think that XRP is going to do something completely catastrophic here. You know, that just doesn't. The asset class, it just does move in tandem. It does. It really does. There's this post from chart analyst Nick, Crypto Crusader, one of the many analysts I follow who accurately called out XRP breaking. Last year he accurately called that XRP breakout into a new all-time high and just melt faces effectively. And certainly XRP has been the #1 performer since the election last year in November. And so he wrote here, if you could only hold one crypto project, what would it be and why? And chart analyst Bobby A responded to this. He's another analyst I follow who accurately called XRP breaking out this market cycle, and it has been the #1 performer out of the top 100 coins since November again. And he said XRP is the most obvious play in the space because of its higher time frame chart. It's been the most obvious play since 2022. Well, I'd argue it's actually been the most obvious for even longer than that. Now, you can make arguments. I understand with the SEC stuff and the implications price-wise for that, but certainly in terms of fundamentals, I think it's been obvious. But if, he's talking about the charts, and so if you're talking about that, yeah, XRP bottomed in June of 2022 at 28 cents. It was clear that it was oversold relative to the rest of the asset class. Markets find bottoms, and so the chart guys were more so coming at it from that perspective. Definitely true. At the same time, though, fundamentals were strengthening, and then in 2023, XRP got legal clarity. It's like so many things happened, and it's just not done here, folks. It is not done. I know it's already run a bit. In fact, you know what? I was just looking at this before I hit record. 1 year ago today, the price of XRP was 60 cents. Right now, $2.90. So if you're pitching a fit, shut up. Like, everything is honestly fine. Like, everything is fine. It's been going the way that we hoped and expected that it would, because why wouldn't it have? Of course this would ultimately happen. I just didn't know exactly what it would. Nobody knew for sure, but here we are, and I'm just telling you, it ain't done. If you let enough time pass, I will not be surprised if at some unknown point in the future, the price is even into double digits. And that's not a price prediction. I don't do price predictions. I admit I don't know. But I'm just saying something like that certainly would not surprise me, because the asset class is getting way bigger and XRP is a crucial part of it. Here's a post from chart analyst Galaxy. He posted this just last night, 10:53 p.m. And it's an Ethereum BTC chart. And he wrote here, Ethereum is attempting to break a 8-year-long resistance line against Bitcoin. I'm telling you guys, there are so many charts that you can look at that show either a coin is breaking out. Like, actually, I think I saw somebody, I didn't take a look at this myself. Actually, might as well just now. Somebody was saying Binance coin hit another new all-time high. Is that true? Did it like 880? It did. Look at, well, let me turn it to a 24-hour chart, but yeah, look at that. $883. Folks, that's one of the top altcoins. Okay, this is the #5 coin in market cap. And to see some coins like BNB doing this, so it's already hitting new all-time high. It already did. That's another new all-time high. And then, to know that Ethereum has been running recently, and it's this close to ripping Bitcoin to shreds, and then XRP can rip both of them to shreds, obviously. Like I keep saying, markets find bottoms, and eventually you break through trend lines, and this is just another example. Like, everything is just too perfectly primed, no matter what analyst that I follow. And I'm selective about who I choose to regularly follow anyway. And none of them think that we're breaking down from here. That would be highly improbable. And then there was this post. This is from the same analyst, Galaxy, and I shared this in a video yesterday, so I'll be brief here, but just to illustrate the point further, it said XRP is in a 5-year accumulation versus Bitcoin. So this is an XRP BTC chart. It says we've been in this spot before, but not for this long. What happens when this breaks out? Well, again, markets find bottoms. And yeah, XRP has absolutely picked up some steam, as you can even see right here, ever since November, because it just, man, it just dominated in the crypto market. And then it's been moving sideways mostly since then. But what do you think's going to happen? Do you think we're never going to see a new all-time high for the XRP BTC pair? It's just never going to happen. Like, come on. I find that very hard to believe. It's just a matter of time. And even if we didn't hit a new all-time high this cycle, do you really think that we're going to just end the cycle without some sort of massive upswing? I find that very difficult to believe. And here's another post. This one's new. This is also from Galaxy. Last one I got from him in this video. But he posted this last night, 11:12 p.m. Central. XRP USD chart. And he said, XRP consolidations are healthy, especially after such a strong breakout. A bullish continuation from here is the most likely scenario. And look, you can see what he's highlighting here. So he's showing a typical chart formation, as cited here, rectangular consolidation. Look what he's highlighting. XRP rocketing in November, as you can see, moving sideways, and then the expectation that it's going to continue. This is exactly what I've been talking about for the longest damn time. Even before it broke out in November of last year, I kept noting XRP, it has a major break, moves sideways about half year, a little longer than that maybe, and then it has a second rip to the upside. Historically, that's what happens. Last cycle and the cycle before that. The consolidation is normal. It's good, it's healthy, it's not... I'm telling you, the volatility, I get it. It emotionally chews people up, but it's normal. And given that it's normal, and that's provably the case, and you can look at it, when what is normal historically continues to happen, it does not make logical sense once you're aware of that to have negative feels. It just doesn't. Here's a post from Chart Analyst Zoom. This post is from April 15th, 2025. And so this is when the market was just basically in the gutter. The bottom for pretty much everything was April 7th, I think. So this is 8 days later. And here he's talking about the XRP ETH pair. And he said, wouldn't mind XRP ETH pulling back down to the red zone. ETH is way too oversold. It's most likely Ethereum's time to make its move and temporarily outperform XRP. Now, it took a little bit, but eventually... that did happen. XRP, if you look at the ETH USD chart, and I was saying the same thing at the time, not from a chart perspective, just from a logical perspective, because I'm not a chart guy myself and I have no interest in being one. It's just so obvious. It's the same thing I said about XRP last year. When it was in the gutter, price against Bitcoin, I said markets find bottoms. And then when Ethereum was priced so low against the dollar, I was like, well, markets find bottoms. The fundamentals aren't any worse than they were several years ago. So if the price is low, it doesn't mean the thing's broken. It just means that it's oversold. And so that was an easy call. And so, as Ethereum came back, it was obvious. And I talked about the XRP ETH chart. I said, yeah, XRP in that case, it could move sideways against the dollar and then fall against ETH, which is exactly what happened. That just made logical sense. As XRP consolidated after a major surge, then ETH showed strength against the dollar. Yeah, of course that was going to happen. That should not be surprising at all. But... what do you think happens now? Because ETH's been running and, we're getting to the point where we're clearly towards the end of the market cycle. Well, much higher ultimately. And so Chart Analyst Zoom shared that post in this new post, and this is just from yesterday evening. He wrote, down 52% since my call for the local top for XRP ETH. Now XRP ETH seems to be sweeping the lows and is near/at the bottom. So here's an analyst that is indicating it looks like either this is the bottom or we're pretty damn close to it, and then XRP can start to rip Ethereum to shreds yet again. As it did. I mean, look at how it was ripping Ethereum to shreds since November. And then it fell down a little bit for reasons that I just cited. It's not done though. XRP has made both Bitcoin and Ethereum its little bitches, and it's going to continue to make them little tiny baby back bitches, even to a greater degree than what's already happened. As far as I'm concerned, that's a virtual certainty. So don't freak out. Even if the market is a little bit lower by the time you're watching this, it is not the end of the world. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because if anything I say are right, that would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.